Well, hey everybody. I want to say thank you for joining in on this. I think what you know is that we have decided to bring VRM Intel Live directly to you. So we've been reaching out to all the people who presented at the VRM Intel Live conferences to bring these sessions directly to you so that your staff, if you can't make it to one of our events, that you've still got the information. One of the reasons that we wanted to do this is that business travel is really slowing down right now, and we know that it's very difficult. This year is having its own sets of challenges right now, so we know that getting your team to conferences is not easy. So we wanted to bring this content to you, and this is the session I'm really excited about. It's new to our conferences, as Brooke is new to his new company, and I'm excited to have him here. I think most of you know him through the industry. We've all known him I've known him since Vantage, the Travel Advantage Network, and then Vantage.
I tried to hire you, Amy, like in what, 2009, 2010, something like that.
Yeah, that was before you got my personality profile. But and then so that was right. That was 2009, and then you ended up with All Star for a while, and then with LiveRes too, and now you're on your own with something that has been a need in our industry for a long time. So instead of me badly recapping my version of your background, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you got into the space?
All right. Well, thank you, Amy, and thanks for having me here. I'm excited to do this little webinar. So, and I guess this will get out to the ability to get out to a lot more people than just who came to Gatlinburg. So thanks for putting this together. So I mean, long story short, I started a company called Vantage Resort Realty in 2007, right? And obviously the heart of the downturn, which I think actually in retrospect was a good time to start a company, and built that company pretty quickly. I had a partner in the business, a gentleman named Brad Callahan, and we had a good time. We built it up pretty quickly, built it up to about 500 properties under management in 5 years. And then in 2013, decided to exit that business. So I left, and then so actually I live in Baltimore, and I would commute every week to Ocean City. So it was about a 3-hour drive. And then when I decided that that wasn't a far enough commute, I decided to commute to Orlando every week. So
that was the funniest thing, because I knew how much you hated that commute, and then I found out that you were going to be working during the week and then coming home on the weekend. I'm like, are you crazy?
I don't know. You know what? My wife, she always said she didn't like it, but then when I actually started working from home, she's like, all right, you got to get another job and get on the road more.
Yeah.
She had to cook dinner every night. But so I ended up going down to Orlando and commuted to Orlando. I was Chief Business Development Officer for All Star Vacation Homes, our friend Steve Trover, and helped him grow that company and expand it into different markets and things. And really, it was kind of interesting just learning how to grow on a much different scale, where Ocean City was it's a 10-mile strip of sand with 20,000 condos. Orlando and the properties that All Star was going after was the antithesis of that. And we were going after 7 to 14 bedroom homes that were generating 150 to 400 to $500,000 in gross booking revenue. So completely different shift. But I learned a ton. We built up a team and grew that, and grew into some different markets like Captiva and Sun Valley and San Diego. And then after about 5 years of doing that, my wife said, all right, honey, why don't you come home? You can actually live with me. And I was lucky enough to join LiveRes as VP of Sales and Marketing. I was able to do that for 2 years and actually work from home. So I did that, and then kind of got the itch to start another business. And really my core and what I really enjoy is the owner acquisition piece, or inventory growth. And I did that. I've done that for about 10 or 12 years now, and this gave me the opportunity to do it. So about a year ago, actually March 1st, will be our 1-year anniversary. Started a company called Vintori, and what Vintori does is we're a sales and marketing agency that helps vacation rental managers grow their inventory. So we're not helping with guest marketing. We're not helping with OTA strategies. We're not helping you with operations and housekeeping and things like that. We've got a very narrow niche, and that niche is, inventory growth. And as you know, Amy, this is probably one of the biggest challenges that most vacation rental managers have in our industry right now. And growing is really the lifeblood of your company. And if you don't grow, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so it's we've found a little niche, and it's going really, really well. We've got a lot of partners signed up. We've got over 32 partners signed up, and we're expanding like crazy. And we've got a nice business, an incredible team, and excited to kind of talk about our homeowner acquisition system that we put together here with you today. How's that?
Well, yeah, perfect. Well, I mean, I know you picked up a pretty amazing team. We've been watching a lot of the industry's brightest move in your direction. So let's talk about this homeowner acquisition process. I don't want to interrupt, I do want you to be able to deliver the same content, but I will ask, I mean, if it's okay with you, we can talk about it during, as you go through
the presentation. That'd be perfect. So what I'll do, if it works for you, is I'll go through the presentation, and if you've got any questions, feel free to fire away and just stop me if it's relevant. That'd be great. I think it actually might flow easier.
Also, any of you that are on the webinar right now, that there is a way in your little chat box thing, part of the GoToWebinar thing, that you can actually ask questions. You can raise your hand. I see that Jill and Meg and Sharon and Susan are on here right now too. So I really appreciate you guys jumping in and asking some questions while we do this. I think, we just popped this up on Facebook, really quickly, just to give some others opportunity while we're recording to be a part of it. But obviously the bulk of this will be done in recording. So most of you listening right now, probably this was recorded before you're seeing this. But I know that Brooke is happy to take any questions that you have, and I'm sure his email is at the end of this presentation. But it is brooke@venturi.com, so
right.
It's fairly all right, let's get started.
Well, thanks for the plug. Well, the presentation can be downloaded, by the way, if you come to just vrmintel.venturi.com. I'm going to be giving away, there's handouts that I gave out at your presentation. There's this whole entire presentation can be downloaded there, and a whole bunch of other additional information. So again, if you need any of this information, just go to vrmintel.venturi.com and we'll go ahead and send that to you. So let's get started. So look, it's tough out there. I've been in your shoes, the shoes of vacation rental managers, and it's getting more and more difficult every single day. If you look at the competition that's growing, and Amy, I'm sure you probably have better stats than I do, but the stats I looked up was, VRMA said, I think it was 4 years ago, there was 8,500 professional vacation rental managers. And then there was a study done last year in May by Hostfully, and they said there was over 23,000 vacation rental managers. So the question is, what's defined as a professional, vacation rental manager? What's the kind of that break point? But needless to say, everyone I think agrees that there's been more and more competition, right? It's a low barrier to entry. It's, ease of marketing and the listing sites and, channel management and software, anyone can be a, professional vacation rental manager now. So when I went down to Gatlinburg, I did a quick search of just all the different companies between Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. And this, I stopped literally at one point. I just, because it was too many. So you can see there's dozens and dozens and dozens of, vacation rental management companies, in these markets, and it's just getting more and more crowded. And I'm sure a lot of these companies, some of these companies that have been around for a while, like Cabins for You and things like that, I'm sure, a dozen years ago, they probably went head to head against one or two companies. And now they're, when they're trying to, get new properties, get new owners. And now I'm sure they're probably, going to head to head against a dozen, different companies. There's just more and more competition. So, but to compound matters, obviously now you have this influx of these large, venture-backed multi-destination vacation rental managers. And these companies, as you know, Amy, are flushed with cash, right? So, Turnkey, I think at last calculation, was raised almost $120 million. Evolve has almost raised $100 million. Picasa, the big one here, obviously over $500 million in capital. So these companies are flush with cash, and they have to grow, right? I mean, that's the name of their game, is growth, 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 and they will do anything in your power. So I was just down in Gatlinburg, with CJ Stam, and he said that, his homeowners are getting hit weekly by Evolve's, marketing, weekly, not monthly, weekly, from them. So, it's having this compounding effect. This is actually a little bit outdated. I actually just, I got this information from somebody who used to work at Vacasa, and then I just talked to a current fucking Vacasa employee. This is the business development department org chart. There's 106 people just in their business development department. And then they've got another 40 dedicated for marketing for the business development. But I just, like last week, spoke to somebody and he said, Brooke, the numbers are actually probably double this. So it gives you an idea of the size of like just, one company and what are they doing, and they have to grow, right? I mean, these companies, again, have dialed in systems for homeowner acquisition. For them to go public and hit their numbers, they've got to show this exponential growth, at any cost. And they're flushed with cash to do whatever it takes to grow.
Yeah,
So,
I was in this role at Turnkey. I don't know if you know that. When I was at Turnkey, I headed up their marketing department and their lead generation teams. And the kind of stuff that we would do for lead generation, we never did when I was at Kaiser Realty.
Yeah.
Connie was with me, she's here with me right now. We didn't do what these guys are doing. It's shocking to me. I mean, it's a full-on sales arm with lead generation, cold calling, automated emails, CRM. I mean, it's like
every channel, right? Through social, through, I mean, I'm getting pinged through LinkedIn for some of these companies. Like, I don't know how they've identified that my property, has, I have a vacation rental property. But it's, these guys are sophisticated, it's next level. And, but it makes you want to do something like this, right? Just, or give up,
right.
Or quit, right? So, but here's the deal. Look, don't give up, don't quit. You got this, right? It just takes, it takes a game plan, takes some execution, and it takes some discipline. And if you do those things, you can battle them because you have things that all these other companies don't have. So it's just about, getting that messaging out there. All right, let's get started. So, as we said earlier, Amy, I've spent, literally the last 12 years in the vacation rental industry, and almost all of this has been focused specifically on one thing, and that's homeowner acquisition. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I've got a lot of battle scars. I've learned a ton along the way. But what I've done is I've really taken all those experiences and created, this 9-point like inventory acquisition system, right? And obviously we don't have enough time to go over, all these in 45 minutes here. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of highlight a couple of these and we can, go through them each. Does that work for you?
Yep.
All right. So let's just start with strategy. So, right, you got, whenever we meet with any of our partners, the first thing we do is we sit down with them and we really kind of just flush out, understand their business model, understand their company. But one of the big key things we're trying to do is identifying their goals, right? What are they looking for? Like first off is like, what kind of inventory do you want? Do you only want golf front properties? Do you only want oceanfront properties? Do you only want ski in, ski out? Do you only want 4 bedrooms or higher? Just the first step is just truly understanding what kind of inventory are you looking for, and identify those key targets. Next is how many properties do you want to add? You may say, all right, 20 properties this year, 30 properties, or I mean, is it realistic if you say, all right, I'm at 100 properties, I want to get to 500 in the next 6 months? What is that going to do to disrupt the rest of the system, right? Do you have the ability to scale that quickly, without kind of just having all the wheels, fall off the bus? So that, that second step is identifying, how many properties do you need? So here's an example. If we were to sit down with one of our partners, we'd go through an example like this. So let's say they have 100 properties currently. The target goal is 140. You got to obviously account for your churn or your attrition, how many properties you lose. And look, I'm seeing more and more companies now are losing inventory. They're losing it for different reasons though. I've heard a lot of people recently are losing them because people are retiring to the home or they're selling it. The market's doing so well that they're deciding to flip that house, sell that house. In Hawaii, we have a couple partners out there, and the properties are now, above water, right? They were underwater for so long that they couldn't sell. and they were forced to rent it out, and now they're actually, you know, above water and they're the ability to sell it. So they are, and some of these new owners aren't renting it out, so they're losing inventory just naturally there. So just you're always going to have natural attrition. So in this example, what we did is we identified that this partner is looking for 50 properties. Like that's what they're going to get. Next step would be is like break out that goal by your major marketing sources. So for here, we're going to talk about direct mail, referrals, and inbound strategies. So, look at your historical data to understand what your marketing source to give you kind of that baseline. If you don't have historical data, you can just start out kind of with your gut. But first step, what we're going to do here is we're going to just kind of go through like a direct mail. So this is, by the way, you can actually download this calculator. I put this on our website or on the vrmintel.ventori.com. So what this is just a super simple calculator. So you enter in the current number of properties you have, you enter in your goal, and then there's a couple other assumptions, and immediately it spits out how many letters do you need to mail, and what it'll cost you. So in this example, this partner was looking for 25 new deals, new properties from direct mail, and assuming the conversion rate, assuming the response rate, and things like that, we identified we need to send out about 5,500 pieces throughout the year, and then you can spread those out either on a monthly basis, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, or you can do it on like you can flush it into kind of your hunting season, as we call it. But in this example, it gives us a CAC, or a cost to acquire a new customer, of $222. So that's what it's costing if assuming all these assumptions, it'll cost us about $222 to get a new property into the program. And I tell you what, Vacasa knows their CAC within a couple dollars. They also know their lifetime value and what that ratio is of lifetime value to CAC. And they are, if the number matches what they need it to be, they're dumping, truckloads of cash, into owner acquisition to meet that, just because they know they're getting that long-term residual income from these properties, and they have to show growth. I realize this is a kind of a marketing calendar, and I realize this is difficult to read. The intent's not to really read each line. This is just to show kind of how we plan out an annual marketing calendar for our partners. So the first column is going to be the campaign. The next column is like who's responsible, right? Who owns that task? And the green dots are just the cadence that they need to execute these tasks. So it doesn't need to be, if somebody's creating something like this, it doesn't need to be this detailed. The whole point of this slide is sometimes you need to just kind of take a step back, establish the playbook in advance, right? Kind of set that strategy, and then decide who's going to execute each campaign of that playbook, and then have them execute it, and then they fill it in, right? If it's yellow, it's planned. If it's green, it's done. If it's red, you missed it, right? So it's very clearly you can identify whether or not you hit these steps, and that's the key with homeowner acquisition. It's just that consistency of the direct mail, consistency of the email, consistency of all those campaigns throughout the year. All right, next up, we're going to move on to messaging. So these are the 6 key points that should go in our opinion, into all marketing. It doesn't matter if it's the brochure, if it's a direct mail piece. For this example, we're actually going to talk about this is the landing page. So we're going to identify the 6 key messaging points that should include all these marketing efforts. So number 1, what is your USP, right? What is your unique selling proposition? What is the one thing that sets your business apart, right? What is the one thing that makes your business better than the competition? So outside of our competition, like Tom's Shoes, it's buy one, give one, right? That's their USP. Next up is features and benefits. So these are specific key factors that make your company special, right? So features are factual statements, but benefits entice the customer to buy, and it answers, answers the question, what's in it for me? So here for Southern Comfort Cabin Rentals, we identified this. We just highlighted a couple of them, but these would be 4 of their key features and benefits. Next up, call to action, right? So what's the point of doing a marketing piece if there's no call to action, right? If every marketing piece encourages the audience to do something. So it could be filling out a form. It could be obviously picking up the phone and calling. And call to actions help convert that visitor to a lead. So again, on this example here, we're trying to get them to fill in this form or pick up the phone and call it. Next up is what we call risk reversals. So the goal of a risk reversal is to reduce any friction around signing up. So you want to make it so enticing that they have no excuses for signing up. This is the infomercial where it's, double your money back guaranteed, or, send us an empty box or send us an empty, pill box and, we'll give you a full refund, those kind of things. So again, make it so enticing that there's no reason not to sign up. Next up is social proof. So social proof is evidence that other people, have signed up and found value in your service. So testimonial is obviously a great example of social proof. If you can customize the social proof, and we'll talk about kind of customization later here, but if you can customize some of these testimonials, like if you're sending out a marketing piece and you can send it to a specific building or a specific community, make sure that the quote is from an owner in that same building as well. If you have a specific landing page, like we do for a lot of our partners, we create very specific landing pages based on communities or buildings. We make sure we always have a quote from somebody in that building. It gets that more of a connection with them. Next up would be trust icons. So trust icons is just another way of demonstrating social proof and authority. So if you're an Airbnb superhost, put it on there, list it, right? If you're A+ rating on Better Business Bureau, list it as well. So these build trust with the prospect, which ultimately make it easier for them to say yes to your offering. All right, and that's messaging. Up next, let's talk about data. So, there's something to be said about starting with a good list. And one of the first things we do after we do our on-site consult and do our discovery process is we really want to start with a good data set, a good list, because everything begins there. And there's a couple different places you can get data. So there's the local MLS down here in Florida. You have Property Appraiser. You can get it from city and local, city and county sources. So there's lots of different sources there. Another one is obviously there's list brokers that are out there, and there's hundreds and hundreds of list brokers. Some of the largest ones that are out there, Melissa Data is a large marketing source. Another one is Exact Data. But the key with these, when you're buying lists from them, what I've found, what we usually recommend is actually getting absentee owner list. So that's where the owner, the mailing address is different than the physical property address. That's usually an indicator of an investor type profile. And then the last is vacation rental permit data. You can't always get this, but sometimes you can. Sometimes the Freedom of Information Act, you can actually get vacation rental permit data. Nashville, for example, I mean, it's literally, you can go right online and download it right there. So what we do is we actually, we merge all these lists together. And what we do is we really want to create this ultimate, really good data file. And again, starting with that solid list, and then you can do email appends, you can do social appends, social address, so get as much data as you can. If you really want to be a baller, you can, in some cases, you can actually scrape some of the OTA. I'm sure you could find somebody to scrape some OTA data out there where the addresses are accurate. Now I know Airbnb master addresses and some other sites master addresses, but some of them you can actually get those physical addresses, and you overlay all these lists together. And again, so now you have this really tight database. And what we recommend is segmenting these lists. And the easiest, simplest way to segment, there's two ways of segmenting. We can segment by personas, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And then you can also segment by target. So what we try to do is A targets, B targets, and C targets. And typically what we recommend to our partners is you hit your A's on a monthly cadence, and it may only be 250 targets that you're hitting on your A's. And then you may have 500 on your B's, and you might hit them on more of a quarterly cadence. And then on your C cadence, C targets, you might want to hit them once or twice a year. That might be 1,000 or 2,000 targets. But the key again is segmenting them, and then by the A's, B's, and C's. And then you want to segment them, if you can, by personas. And sometimes you can get this information, sometimes you can't. Depends how good your pending data person is. So here's kind of some examples. You have RBO Ruby, you have competitor Chris, and we have the purchasing Petersons. And so what we do when we meet with our partners, we actually break down all their personas. And you have the standard ones, but sometimes certain markets, like up in the Northeast and New England, things like that, they have some different ones. And each market has kind of some unique personas. But what we're trying to do here, and you don't have to go overboard like this, but you should have a good idea of like who your targets are, right? You know, we like to identify who are those key targets. What are the key factors that are important to them, right? What are their key pain points? And what are your key features and benefits that we talked about before in the messaging that solve those pain points? And we're going to talk about this later, but this is helpful to communicate these during the buyer's journey. And we'll,
Can I interrupt you really quickly?
Of course.
Yeah, going back to the messaging, we had a question that is there a place that you recommend to get high quality format trust icon images? Does Airbnb provide them to you if you are a superhost?
That's a great question. I don't know. Our graphic designer grabs those. I don't think he's doing anything special to get those. I don't think we're getting them straight from Airbnb. I think he's literally just.
My understanding on the media side, it's like, for instance, we've been looking at adding ours, like, so we've had mentions in Forbes, Inc., Business Insider, like Skipped, and we can get those and, you know, create those and put those there with links to the articles that mentioned us. If you, I mean, Airbnb and Vrbo both have an agreement. They have logos that they will give you to share on your page. VRMA has that as well if you're a member. I'm trying to think the others. Booking.com, I don't think anyone's had to use permission to get theirs. But there is like a way that you can link to all your listings on a site. And I've seen that happen. But yeah, but a lot of people are just taking them off Google image search. Do you think that's kind of what people are doing?
I think that's probably, I don't know for certain because I haven't asked them because I just know it comes up. Our graphic designer just, he finds a way and it's on there. So I assume that's probably what he's doing.
All right, thanks.
I don't know if that's the right answer, but cool.
All right.
Any other questions while we're here?
Not right now.
Okay.
Actually, on the messaging, I mean, like that risk reversal idea. Do you think, from a tone perspective, like the kind of tone that you're trying to create, I guess it's really like what type of. Hey, I'm going to turn off our webcams because it looks like our connection's getting a little iffy. Do you mind?
Go ahead.
I'm turning you off your webcam, Brett. So, yeah. That whole like 100% satisfaction guaranteed, or, you know, guaranteed income streams, or guaranteed revenue, you know, projections. Is there a place that maybe that's not appropriate if a company doesn't want to maybe attract a certain type of homeowner, or a homeowner that's looking for, I don't even know how to ask a question. Do you know what I mean? Like someone.
Yeah, so, well, not all of our partners will do that. I mean, it's just one strategy that we recommend. Look, it does get the phone to ring, and it does get some traffic, you know, by having that guarantee. But the problem, it's a little bit, it's kind of losing a little bit of its luster now because more and more people are doing it. And here's the thing, look, you can guarantee anything you want, right? I mean, if you project this property is going to do 50,000 and you guarantee 35,000, you know what I mean, or 30,000, you know, is it, you know, does it give any weight to it? It ultimately depends on, and what are the out clauses, you know, for it. I mean, we did it for, you know, when I was at Vantage, we did guarantees and lease backs and kind of played the rental arbitrage game, and it worked really well. I mean, it was also a different market then. You know, we were driving off the edge of a cliff, you know, in 2007.
Yeah.
So people were willing to do it, and that was one of the reasons why we were able to grow so quickly, is we actually did leverage that. But you don't have to do it. And I would say about, I've done an official, you know, survey, but I'd say maybe only like 30 to 40% of our partners actually do the guarantees. The rest don't. There's other strategies, but the risk reversals are more, you know, it's like, all right, again, how do you reduce friction in that buying process? How do you, you know, maybe no startup fees, and you know, or you know, just what can you do to make that sign up as easy as possible, right? And that's the whole point. And if you look at the value of lifetime, we didn't talk about this on this presentation, but I gave another presentation, I think it was at VRMA New Orleans, and we looked at the lifetime value of an owner, you know, and what one property is worth to your rental program. And if you start looking at it as a lifetime value, you know, people maybe you eat the marketing fee, or you eat the the resort, Point Central locks or something like that, just to make sure you're getting people signed up, because again, you're making that money pretty quickly back from them. Other people I found in some other markets actually went the other way. They didn't want to have, they wanted to actually put some kind of a threshold there for people to sign up, because it was kind of a new market to rentals, where a lot of people, it was first timers. And what they found were, they go through all this to sign up, and then after a month of doing it, they would, back out. And obviously they go through a significant, investment to get them onboarded.
And Brooke, let me ask you something. If you're on your pane where it says audio, there's the opportunity to call in instead of using the computer audio. We're having a connection issue.
Okay.
Do you mind doing that really quickly?
Not at all.
What does that say? All right, I'm going to assume the rest of you can hear me. I think what we've got is we've got a lot of bad weather in the southeast right now, and Brooke is in the Panhandle, and I'm on the Alabama Gulf Coast, so we're having a tough time. But I think one of the things that I thought was interesting when we were working at Turnkey on this is that it was in the lead generation piece of it, from that data acquisition, that we would target the types of properties that we really wanted to have. So for instance, we had a lot of 2-bedroom condos on the Panhandle and didn't want to continue to go after those. So we would only look for 1-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms to kind of weed that out. And then we had a lead gen team that would actually go on to Airbnb and Vrbo and actually look for that guest information, that homeowner information. We would try to zero in on street numbers, and things like that. Interestingly now, did you know that booking.com publishes all the addresses?
Yep. So does, I think TripAdvisor does too, if I'm not mistaken.
Everything moved to map driven once Google got in the game. So it's like now, even if you don't have your addresses on your properties, they're on Booking. I think you're right, and TripAdvisor. And Expedia. If your Vrbo properties have gone to Expedia, they're there as well. Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry, our connection's awful.
Sure. No worries. So I hope this is better.
It is. It's just the weather.
Well, cool. Well, kind of fill in this loop here with personas. So I don't know how much was heard before, but what we like to do is we like to identify who are those key targets. Again, what are the key factors that are important to them, and what are their key pain points, right? And what are your key features and benefits that we talked about before in the messaging that solve those pain points? And again, this is helpful to communicate this during the buyer's journey. So moving on here, next we're going to talk about marketing, right? So I could give a 3-hour presentation probably just on different marketing techniques, and this is the one that always kind of gets people excited. But we obviously only have a little bit of time here, so we'll just highlight a couple key points today. So we're going to talk about direct mail, and then we're going to talk about like an inbound marketing strategy. So first off, direct mail, the vacation rental industry is one of the few industries where direct mail still works, right? But it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It needs to be a consistent drip, and you have to continue to do it. And what happens is I see it all time and time again. People do it 1 or 2 or 3 months, and then they stop. And then it needs that consistency of the direct mail. But what we recommend is you implement these strategies that we talked about before for the messaging, right? And we recommend you look for a print house that can do digital dynamic variable printing. So what that means is you can actually customize the messaging on each letter. So for like this example right here, you see, what we actually did is we created a very specific piece for a building. So this is this one building. It has that picture of their condo units. obviously is mail merging in their name. And then you can see here's another building that we're targeting, another community that we're targeting, and it's obviously changing their name. Here down in 30A, you can see we can kind of change it based on the community. We can change their name. But again, the more customization you can do to the letter, it gets a lift in response rates. And if you remember in the earlier, that direct mail calculator, over time, little tiny improvements in response rates makes a big difference. If you really want to be a baller here, what you can actually do is remember we talked about before by the personas. So if you've actually segmented the list properly, you can actually customize the features and benefits based on the pain points of the persona. So here would be, let's say, features and benefits for this persona, RBO Ruby. And then if we change it to competitor Carla, we can kind of change the key features and benefits based on that. But again, the only way you can do that is with digital dynamic printing. And it sounds hard, but it's actually not that difficult. It's just a little bit of upfront setup work. So we've had, sometimes, postcards are great and the customization, but sometimes simple letters, are better than anything else. So here's an example. We actually have a dozen of these little handwriting robots that write handwritten letters. And these stupid little handwritten letters, I've been using these for years. They get such a good response. I mean, I'm talking sometimes 500% response, greater response than the average direct mail. And I heard from Vacasa, their best responding letter is just it's kind of the story, right? The Eric Brion's story of how he started with one vacation rental. And that got a really good response. I was talking to another vacation rental manager, and they do a kind of CEO letter, and that gets a great response. So sometimes you spend all this money, you get a really professional, beautiful looking postcard, and it ends up not being the best responding. And sometimes it's some of these simple ones. And again, I could talk about 100 different ideas as far as marketing strategies regarding direct mail. All right, so let's move on to inbound marketing. So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. So we just talked about outbound marketing techniques like direct mail. And let me back up. So what we found is the metaphor here would be like you have an empty pool in the backyard and you got to fill it up with water. And how do you do it? Do you throw a hose in there? Yes. But, 2, 3, 4, 5 hoses, is going to make it go a lot faster. And there's no one strategy just to focus on. It's not just direct mail. It's not, PPC. It's not retargeting. It's a combination of multiple efforts. So the one that I kind of see over a long term that has the best ROI is inbound marketing. So again, no silver bullet, but you got to have this proper long-term strategy. A nice balance of these multiple marketing sources. So there's a fundamental shift that's going on right now in marketing, right? This shift from outbound to inbound. And the power has shifted from the seller to the buyer. And, so you think, all right, what is inbound marketing, Brooke? It's, attracting customers with valuable content and experiences, custom tailored towards them, right? And you want to form connections by solving problems that they already have. The stages, through the buyer's journey, right? You have awareness, you have consideration, and you have decision. And it's all about delivering the right information, at the right time of the buyer journey. And you need to align with the way the buyers think, research. So why is this important? First off, this is the way people want to buy. People want to, they would prefer not people screaming at them and cold calling them and, everything else. They would prefer to have more of a research-based, strategy. And then also, secondly, it costs less. It's 61, I think it was HubSpot did a study of over 900 marketing professionals, and they found that inbound marketing costs 61% less per lead than traditional outbound marketing. So this, inbound strategy, for some companies, it may sound daunting. It's like, where do you start? So start small, think about your buyer, right? Think about those personas. What are their pain points? What are the questions that you keep getting asked, right? If for this example, right, if you keep getting asked questions about what information should be included in the home, create a checklist form of all the items that need, every vacation rental should be stocked with. Put that on your landing page. Put it on your owner acquisition page. And do retargeting. Put the Google and Facebook, retargeting pixels on there. And we're also going to show some other examples and tools that you can do to create these. So interactive content is a great way to build an inbound strategy. So obviously, Amy, we both know our good friend David Angotti with SmokyMountains.com. He created a really cool, I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but it's a fall foliage prediction map. This thing is unbelievable.
Cool. And it's just what it does to attract traffic is insane. It's a magnet.
It is. And it's been featured on New York Times, USA Today. I mean, major publications. I mean, did this take a lot of time to put together? Absolutely. However, this map is absolutely, you said, it's a gold mine. Since its inception, it's had over 10 million visitors. This year alone, it had over 4 million unique visitors. Could you imagine? And it's evergreen. You know what I mean? Year after year after year, these companies keep coming back to it, right? And if you had to pay for that traffic, what would that cost, right? So this to me is kind of like one of the best examples in our industry of interactive content. So I'll kind of talk about a couple examples we've done with some of our partners. So our friend CJ with Southern Comfort Cabin Rentals, his business development rep kept on telling us that she was always getting inundated with questions about how certain properties that they were interested in buying were performing. And she looked at it as a nuisance. And I was like, because she's like, I create these performas, I send them over to them, and I never hear from them again, or I hear from them like a year later, kind of thing. So what we did is we created an interactive map. And what we do is every month we update, we get the top 20 properties that are on the market. And we actually attached a performa to each one. And we actually did this. This is through a really simple mapping app called Batch Geo. So anyone can get it. I think it's $99 a month. And you can map anything you need, right? And then you can upload the performas in there. And what's cool with this too, Amy, is you can actually, if you use CRM like HubSpot has a free service, free forever, up to 1 million leads. You can actually get gated content. So you can actually set it up where if somebody wants, to download one of these performas, they have to enter their email address. So now you at least have captured that lead. So we're creating this funnel coming in here. And what we're finding a lot of times it's realtors. So now what we do is we're using this as a marketing strategy to real estate agents. We're going to them and saying, hey, think about the typical real estate agent, be in their shoes, right? It's, 15 minutes before their listing showing. And they've got, the buyers said they want to buy a vacation rental. And now they've got to scramble like crazy to get numbers. And they're calling anybody they can that'll give those and provide those numbers. But if they know that they have this resource here that they can go to and just print off these proformas, what's going to happen? They're going to pass out these proformas to these buyers. They may not buy these houses, but they may buy another house. But at least they're going to then call you because you have a contact information on there and all their key features and benefits and risk reversals and everything else. You can actually, now we're using this as a marketing source. So again, this is another great example of interactive content that we can use to grow, their business. Another one, what we did is we created an interactive calculator. And so you could, potential owner can come on, log in. They could actually don't even log in. It's just right on their own acquisition page. Enter in parameters such as the nightly rate, the occupancy, their commission. I mean, you can make it as complicated or as simple as you want, and it'll actually spit out what the property will cost you per month or what it will make you, per month. Even talk about, you can even get in there, ROIs and cap rates if you want to really get sophisticated. And this is actually done through a free app that anyone can download. It's called Calconic. So if you just go to calconic.com, you can actually download these interactive calculators, and they'll just give you the code, and then you just copy and paste that widget code onto your website. So where else can you get help with for content? So there's great sources. I've had a ton of success with Upwork. Upwork is a fantastic source for graphic designers, content people, anything you can imagine. I even had Advantage. I actually used, the precursor to Upwork was a company called Elance. And I found our on hold music was through Elance, which was the girl that actually did the Apple commercials. I got her to do our on hold music for like $50. So I mean, you can find anything you can imagine, from on hold music, to explainer videos, to content writers, and so on. But if you're looking specifically for content, I've heard great things about Writers Access. Really, really good source there. I know David Angotti has recommended that many times. Alexa Noda, obviously with Copy Post Repeat, she knows our industry inside out. She does content writing. So there's tons of sources out there. It's just a matter of just getting out there and engaging with them. All right, next up, let's talk about sales tools. So we talked about some pro formas before. Again, we have an in-house graphic designer, but you could, push these out to anyone on Upwork to kind of build. But, anything you can do to kind of, create in advance to have really dialed in information to pass out. These have been multiple different versions here. These are more of like a side-by-side comparison where it actually shows expenses. So if you have a buyer, you put in there, this is actually just built in Excel. So we can change it out, and all the cells are dynamic, so it changes automatically. And then here's another version done in Excel. But again, anything you can do to help get in front of those buyers, or prospective owners to kind of show the kind of professionalism. If they see the way you're doing these things, they're going to assume that the rest of the organization is pretty dialed in. Here's a cool strategy we did with Southern Comfort. We actually once a year we actually send out. So we send it to the current owners, and we actually send it out to prospective owners. And it's just a market report. It's like, how is Blue Ridge performing? And this information was just taken from Key Data Dashboard. And what doing this does is it puts you out in the market as seen as an expert, right? You're an expert in the market. The market. You're a leader. And again, people are in different phases of the buyer journey, and they will hold on to this stuff. And they may not call you immediately, but I've heard story after story after story where people have walked in, into their office a year later with a marketing piece and say, "Hey, you sent me this. I've been holding on to it. It's been stuck to the side of my fridge. I've been just waiting for the right time, and I'm ready to do this." So what can you do to kind of get out in front of them? All right, let's wrap it up here. So let's talk about the key takeaways. So first, set your goals and reverse engineer it, right? So use that direct mail calculator that we provide to find out how many letters you need to mail out on a monthly basis and what your budget is. Take a step back and create the plan, and then execute that plan. Build out something similar to kind of what we did, that marketing calendar playbook. Create your core messaging. So update your landing page, any kind of your postcards and things like that with that 6 key messaging elements. Again, you can download this presentation at viramintel.ventori.com. There's also actually in there, there's a couple other downloads that we'll provide. We actually have a direct mail essentials. So everything that should be provided in a direct mail piece, all the key elements that'll be being able to download as well. Start with a good list. We talked about absentee owner list. We talked about Melissa data, exact data, and then overlay those. Next up, create personas, right? Create custom messaging that speaks to each persona. Just, dip your toes in the water. If you haven't started with inbound marketing, start doing it, right? Leverage outsourced talent. It doesn't have to be difficult. Just start leveraging some of the outsourced talent that's out there. And then again, my favorite of content is interactive content. So try to, pull in some interactive content using some tools, and there's dozens out there, additional ones, but these are just the 2 that we've found are pretty useful, but Capconic and Batch Geo for mapping. And that is it. So Amy, what questions do you have, or what questions does the audience have?
Yeah, first of all, on budgeting, what kind of money should people be spending on homeowner acquisition? Is there a number of what you pay for a referral, how much you should be spending on marketing, any kind of a budget formula?
Yeah, so it depends, right? It depends on what is your lifetime value of that property, and that's where you start it. And to kind of take at a very high level, it's okay. What does that property do? In gross booking revenue, what I found, Amy, is the average, I mean, asking this question well over 100 times, the average company ends up usually netting about 8 to 10% of the gross booking revenue, right? So if a property is doing 50,000 and it's doing 10% margins on that gross booking revenue, and Amy, this doesn't matter if this is a big company in Vail and Aspen that's getting a 40% commission, or if this is Outer Banks in North Carolina, Ocean City, Maryland, getting 16% commission. It's always, there's other levers that you can pull to kind of get the margins where they need to be, but it always seems to be about 10%. So that property doing 50,000 times 10%, you're looking at about 5,000, and then you figure out what's your lifetime value, what's your lifetime in years. So if you have a 10% churn, that means you just take 1 divided by the churn. So 1 divided by 10% equals 10. So 10 years. So that $5,000 up front, per first year times 10 years, the value of that property is $50,000, right? So now you look at that property a little bit differently than, what's the value worth to it? Like what can my CAC, my cost to acquire that new customer, be? And some may argue up to the first year, income. So if you're making 5,000 on it, you can spend up to $5,000 to acquire that customer. I mean, I tell you what, there's companies that'll spend well more than that. If you look at kind of, why companies are buying other companies or buying contracts, you can spend much more of that. So it really depends ultimately on what is the value of that property.
Right. I mean, those acquisition costs are about 16,000 right now. When someone buys a company, that cost per contract is somewhere around between 15 and upwards to 20, but close to 16 on average. Which I think is an interesting kind of like metric, that whole, when you look at someone buying and everyone's talking about EBITDA, but in our industry, it really is the contract value. And when you think about like cost per property, when you buy a company, that's kind of an interesting metric to follow.
Yeah. Absolutely. But here's the thing. If you look at what some of our partners are ranging anywhere between $200 to acquire a new customer and, $800, $900. But if you're making 5,000, in year 1 on that property and you have a 10-year lifetime, I mean, that's a pretty solid ROI. I mean, if my financial advisor were to come to me and give me that kind of ROI numbers, I would back up the truck and, dump it. But here's the key point we're not talking about, Amy, is yes, you're making that money year after year after year on that property. But if you decide to exit, there's a whole nother cash flow you're getting.
Essentially a 3x on that right off the bat.
At least, right? And if you're in a hot market, you know what I mean? It's going to be up to, 5 and maybe even 6, that number. So, you know what I mean? You can get, you know what I mean? So you're getting the money residually year after year after year. And then you're also getting it at exit. I mean, I was just talking to somebody earlier today and we talked about that. If we got him 10 extra properties this year at 5,000, you know what I mean? What a difference that would make to, when he goes to sell his business, I mean, that's a down payment on his place in the Cayman Islands.
That island we're all going to retire to one day. So in one of the questions that we have is looking at multi-destination players right now. They've hit the airwaves, so to speak, with a lot of messaging about better technology, about tech-enabled, that they're tech-enabled, and all these other managers in the market are essentially old and tired. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically when you see some of this new marketing, it kind of gives you the idea that you're either getting something really sophisticated and forward thinking and tech enabled, or you're sticking with something local, mom and pop, maybe even a little bit unsophisticated. Is the inference. How do you battle that in your marketing?
Well, when we, through our discovery phase, and we go on site and meet with all our partners, we flush out what is their messaging, right? What sets them apart? And look, technology may be one of those things. Here's the thing. What are you using right now? What tools are you using? Are you using dynamic pricing? Are you using key data dashboards? Are you using Beyond Pricing? Are you using these different companies? Are you using a property management software solution? Like, I bet you most companies, even if they're considered more mom and pop, actually have some pretty advanced software. Are you using Point Central, door locks and things like that? I mean, so half the battle is these companies do a really, really good job. You know what I mean? Have really, really good services and features and things like that. They're just not communicating, you know? And there's actually a great story, and I'll be quick. There's a great book called Ready, Fire, Aim. And there was a advertising executive back in like the 30s or something like that. And he was hired by a brewery. There was only 8 breweries at the time. And they were in 8th place. So 8th out of 8th. And they brought him in and they kind of gave him the tour, and he was amazed by like the level of detail they would go to make sure the bottles were clean. I mean, people were in like hazmat suits, you know, it's like, I mean, they would go through all these different steps. Like the family had been going to Bavaria for 3 generations to buy the hops and hand pick them and everything else. And he was blown away by this. And he went to the execs and he said, guys, like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe you guys do all this stuff. Like, why don't you tell anybody? And the beer execs at the time said, well, everybody does it this way. And he goes, well, if you're not communicating it, nobody knows. So what did he do? He created this he didn't change the recipe. He didn't change the logo. He didn't change the brand. All he did was just change the messaging and highlighted those things that he saw. And they went literally from 8th place, I think, to 2nd place within like a year. You know, and the point of that is a lot of these vacation rental managers have really, really good businesses. They're just not communicating it. And the big boys are doing a much better job of communicating it through.
We do have a question about onboarding, about the, you know, kind of handling the growth. If a company is starting from scratch on recruitment, is it better to make sure that you have the infrastructure and staff in place, or at least a plan for rapid growth? Or should you work on adding properties first?
That's a great question.
Scale.
So again, going back to Ready, Fire, Aim, that book. One thing I really like about that book is they talk about businesses in different stages. They talk about it from zero. Yeah, I'll give you a copy. They talk about it from like 0 to 1 million, 1 million to 10 million, 10 million, like 100 million or something like that. You know, and there's key things that you need to decide on in different phases. And the kind of the kiss of death so often for some businesses. And look, I'm a Ready, Fire, Aim person. So I'm like you, Amy. You know, our profiles are pretty similar. And I'm just like, go. You know what I mean? How quickly can we expand and grow? But what they talk about is in 0 to 1 million, the number one thing you have to do is you need cash flow, right? Your business will not survive if you can't get cash flow. So you got to do whatever you can to ramp up that business. And don't worry about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? You know what I mean? Like, get cash flow in as quickly as possible, and then you can worry about kind of the other stuff. Now, are you going to have some disruption, and is there going to be some issues and some, you know, people? You know, yes, but phase number 1, and I guarantee you there's profiles that are the opposite of us, Amy, that will, you know, probably screaming at us right now saying, no, 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 no. But in my mind, it's all about getting that. You got to get that cash flow to survive, because if you don't have cash flow, the business is done. Unless you're funded, you know, you got a big, you know, $2 million sitting in your bank to fund it. It's all about getting that cash flow as quickly as possible.
Going, you know, to add to that on the infrastructure, what infrastructure should be in place in terms of staff to get ready? For instance, I'll give you an example. When Ben Connie's also sitting here with me, and we were both at Turnkey for a while, and we've also looked at Vacasa pretty closely. You know, they have a queue of onboarding, like a backlog of properties to onboard. And that whole entire process of trying to get the time to onboard a property down was very intentional. In terms of onboarding a property correctly, like photography, descriptions, floor plans, all that kind of stuff, what should people be trying to build out if they're looking to increase their inventory by 50 to 100 units or something like that?
Well, so say that again. So these companies were actually intentionally slowing down the process?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it takes time to onboard these properties correctly. So it's like if you were planning for a high growth mindset, you know, getting properties in the door, you want to be able to set these expectations correctly, you know, of how long it's going to take to get a property online.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, setting the proper expectations. I mean, that's always. That's always number one, and it's always the from the beginning of time, it was the conflict between sales and operations, right? The operations people are always screaming at the salespeople for not setting the right proper expectations. It's just a matter of fact the way it always will be. But setting the expectations is always helpful, because the last thing you want to do is go through all that effort and you bring them on and they churn, pretty quickly, because then you're just really losing money. But what we recommend for our partners is just making sure you have a dialed in system of onboarding, right? You just have certain people, very, very clearly defined. We recommend tools like Asana or any kind of other project management tool to just onboard it throughout the process, and just making sure that nothing is, skipping steps and going on. But look, sometimes it's challenging when you're a small business startup with 2, 3, 4 employees. Getting those on, but it's pretty critical to get that ramped up, quickly and correctly.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're looking at your messaging, going back to that again, do you look at the messaging type as more of a B2B, business to business marketing style, or business to consumer, or B2C marketing style?
That's a great question. You know what? So when we go through, and we only showed like 4, USPs, but usually we'll end up flushing out. Like if you go to a landing page of any partner that we've done this for, we're sometimes doing 8 to 12, key USPs or features and benefits. And what I like to do and what we coach on is part of this is going through, and I don't know if this answers your question or not, but it's asking lots of questions in the discovery phase, right? So if I'm meeting with a prospective owner, finding out what are their pain points, if they could describe the perfect property management company, vacation rental management company, what does it look like? And asking them that, they're going to tell you how to pitch them and sell them. So then when we are going over our key features and benefits, we're only highlighting the ones that, are relevant to them. So if it's, if there are more numbers and, and factual, we're going to highlight, revenue management. We're going to highlight our marketing. If they're, more like, if to them it's more important about the house and the care, we're going to focus on those features and benefits. So we really kind of custom tailor, even though we have this whole list of them, we're kind of pointing more at it. So I don't know if I would say the more factual people, where we're giving pro formas, that would be more of a B2B type of a consumer, and you can usually tell who they are, right? It's the anal accountant or financial advisor that's really focused on the numbers, or if it's the homeowner that's more interested in just making sure their property is maintained well. That would be more of a probably B2C, if you will.
Is anal accountant one of your personas?
I don't think it is, but it should be.
It's kind of stuck out. I was thinking about when I was at Kaiser again, kind of over at Kaiser, we had owner reps, or what do we call them? The owner rental managers.
Liaison. Okay.
Yeah, who were the ones who were both, and when they did both sales and basically account management of these homes. And so each owner rep had about 70 or 80 homes, or rental manager had about 70 or 80 homes under their can't think of the
portfolio.
Exactly, in their portfolio. And they met with them, they had to call them once a quarter, that kind of stuff. So what we have run into is you've got these homeowners who are fairly affluent. In our market, the people who own properties, we're in a much different income bracket and a much different education level than the rental managers who were working with them. So there was always this kind of a disconnect between the homeowner and the rental manager or their contact. In terms of owner acquisition, we've the companies that we see being really successful in owner's acquisition are the ones in which the founder or the owner, or the CEO, some C-level person is actually communicating with the homeowner. As far as bringing those homeowners in the marketing phase and selling them, do you recommend a higher tier of employee to be handling that sales process?
Well, it depends on how big you are, right? You know what I mean? If you're a three-man shop, you know what I mean? It kind of, depends. But what I recommend is, and look, I did it exactly the way you just talked about Kaiser. So the people that, we had these rental managers, and their responsibility was both bringing on properties, and then they own the relationship with those owners. I actually have changed my tune here to that. You know what I mean? I actually think you should have a dedicated business development person who is, and it, again, we know a lot of what we do about like predictive index, these personality profiles. The type of person that is a really good hunter, right, is not necessarily a great manager, you know what I mean, rental manager, and owning that relationship. So I look at it as I want the hunter, right? I want the guy or the girl that can go out there and just kill it, is just signing them up left and right, is networking and building relationships with real estate agents and builders and everybody, right? And then, but again, that profile is usually not very detail oriented, not good at following up. What are the attributes? What are the features that are probably pretty important to a good rental manager? You want somebody that's very accurate, has a lot of follow up, and again, they usually don't go hand in hand. So I want a rental manager that has that different personality. But I look at it as, especially if you're at the point where you can do this. First off, again, going back to the lifetime value of an owner, what that's worth. So if you lose one of those owners, what is that costing you in future revenue coming out? So then you start doing that math, you realize this is a pretty important position. So I would hire a specific person for that. And I would treat this, so I have a financial advisor. Every 6 months, him and I meet, and we sit down, and he actually gives me all these charts and graphs and everything, and kind of goes over our portfolio, right? And he tells us how it performed. He tells me how the market performed, and then he gives me specific strategies on what we need to do, whether it's rebalancing, whether it's moving to cash, whether it's, maybe getting into international stocks, whatever it happens to be, but he's making recommendations. My challenge is we are asset managers. You know what I mean? Why are we not doing that? If you look at the revenue that's coming through some of these properties, like, my God, we should be treating this though we are a financial advisor, sitting there with a suit, across the table, and making these recommendations. And if you can make some simple recommendations like, hey, invest, $5,000 and get a hot tub, it's going to net you an extra 20, first year alone, like, we should be doing that. Like, this is part of our fiduciary responsibility to the owner to do that stuff. So I would argue, going back to your question, you definitely need a dedicated hunter who is out there, a business development person. You also need a dedicated person behind the scenes who is, doing that owner relation piece. And again, they're usually not the same personality profile.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. We would have been much more successful had we separated that out. I think in that reporting, you're saying, like, as an asset manager, which of course I totally agree with. I think that's how especially local property managers can set themselves apart from the multi-destination players.
I agree.
Because you've got two facets of the home, right? You've got short-term rental income, and then you've got long-term appreciation of the property. And so many people are just focused on maximizing occupancy in these new companies, and maximizing occupancy may or may not contribute to growing short-term rental income and long-term appreciation of the asset. So in that reporting, in that whole like post-sale, like keeping the client, homeowner retention, in your system, do you provide them with this is what your reporting should look like to the homeowner?
Well, we give some recommendations on some reporting that you can do, right? So like, if you're going to do it on an annual basis, whether you're going to do it on a semi-annual basis, we give some suggestions on what that should do. I've sat in every presentation Jason Sprinkle has done, and what I like about what he talks about is, if you go in there and you just meet with your owner and they're down 10% and they fire you because they're down 10%. Well, but if the market was down 20%, you actually overachieved by 10%. But if you didn't communicate that to your owners, shame on you, right? You kind of deserve to lose that property. So there's tools out there where you can pull this information and present that. And again, I think I said this before, a save of a property is like a win, right? It's actually more important. You want to retain these owners. There's simple things like that you can do. I highly recommend it. But there's great tools like key data dashboards out there that can really kind of help, share that information with your homeowners.
Well, Brooke, I really appreciate you doing this. I know we've kept you a lot longer than you anticipated being on here today, but I think it's a valuable discussion.
That's great. No, I
So how do
appreciate
people
it.
get
This was fun. Thank you. Yeah, so best way would just be going to our website, which is just vintory.com, vintory.com. And I didn't even give myself a shameless plug here on this last page, so shame on me for doing that. Or you could, again, just go to vrmintel.vintory.com, and obviously you can get a hold of us that way, and or Brooke, Brooke, at vintory.com as well. And glad to help out anyone, even if it's, pro bono. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, I'm always willing to help people grow.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship. Thank you for coming to Destin and Gatlinburg, and we will hit you up for August. Yeah.
I know.
We'll talk to you. Hey,
can't
safe
wait.
travel.
Denver, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.